I saw him exactly 7 minutes before I lost my job. 7 minutes. That's how long it took for my entire life to change. For everything I thought I knew about survival and safety and keeping my head down to completely unravel. 7 minutes between noticing a small boy sitting alone and being thrown out into the rain with nothing but my conscience and a broken heart. My name is Asher Brooks. I'm 25 years old, and I've been working as an event coordinator for Prestige Catering for 3 years. It's not glamorous work, but it pays my bills and keeps me too busy to think about the brother I lost or the guilt that follows me like a shadow. I'm good at my job because I'm good at being invisible, at making sure everything runs smoothly while staying out of the way. That night, I was supposed to stay invisible. The charity gala was being held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, one of those venues where the chandeliers cost more than my annual salary and the guest list read like a who's who of the city's elite. Children's education fundraiser, black tie, 500 guests, open bar. My job was to coordinate the kids' entertainment area, make sure the hired performers showed up on time, keep the little ones from destroying the elegant setup. I was checking on the face painting station when I noticed him. A small boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, sitting in the corner of the room while 24 other children ran and played around him. He was beautifully dressed in a tiny suit that probably cost more than my rent. Dark hair neatly combed, small hands folded perfectly in his lap. But what caught my attention wasn't how still he sat or how perfectly behaved he seemed. It was the way his head tilted slightly, tracking sounds instead of sights, the way he didn't flinch when kids ran past him, the way he sat facing a wall, not the room. My chest tightened with recognition I didn't want to feel. I watched as a little girl approached him, her face bright with curiosity. She reached out to tap his shoulder, probably to ask him to play. Before she could touch him, her mother appeared out of nowhere and grabbed her wrist, yanking her back so hard the girl stumbled. "Stay away from him," the mother hissed, her voice low but caring in that particular way that made sure people nearby could hear. "Just stay away." The little girl's eyes went wide. "But Mommy, why?" "Because I said so. That boy is." The mother glanced around, lowered her voice even more. "His fathers did something dark to get their money. That's why he's like that. It's a curse. You don't want it spreading to you." The little girl stared at the boy with fear now, instead of curiosity. Her mother pulled her away quickly, shooting one last look at the child that was equal parts pity and disgust. The boy's shoulders hunched slightly inward, his hands curled tighter in his lap. He'd heard every word. I knew that hunched posture, knew that careful stillness that came from learning the world didn't want you, knew what it felt like to hear people whisper about you like you weren't even there. My brother Ethan had been blind from birth. He'd sat exactly like that at events when we were kids, trying to make himself smaller, trying not to be a burden, trying not to exist too loudly in spaces that didn't want him. Before I could think about what I was doing, my feet were moving. I crossed the entertainment area in long strides, stepping around, bouncing children, and harried parents. My clipboard hung forgotten at my side. I could feel other parents watching me, could sense their confusion and disapproval, but I didn't care. I stopped in front of the boy and knelt down slowly, bringing myself to his eye level, even though I knew he couldn't see me. "Hi there," I said gently. "I'm Asher. What's your name?" The boy's head lifted slightly, turning toward my voice. His eyes were a striking gray blue, unfocused in that particular way, that confirmed what I already knew. He was beautiful, with delicate features and long lashes that would have made him look like a doll, if not for the wariness in his expression. "Silas," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's a really great name," I said, keeping my tone warm and easy. "It sounds strong, like a tree. Do you know what a tree feels like?" Silas shook his head, a tiny movement. "Would you like to?" I asked. He nodded, more enthusiastically this time. I looked around the room and spotted one of the decorative columns near the wall. It was designed to look like it was covered in bark, the texture deliberately rough and realistic. Perfect. "Can I take your hand?" I asked. "I want to show you something." Silas hesitated for just a second, then extended his small hand toward me. I took it carefully, noting how his fingers immediately curled around mine with a trust that made my throat tight. I guided him to the column and placed his palm flat against the textured surface. "This is what tree bark feels like. Rough, right? With little ridges and bumps." If you press hard, you can feel the pattern. Each tree has different bark, like fingerprints. Silas's face lit up. His fingers explored the surface with growing confidence, tracing the artificial ridges with obvious delight. It's scratchy. Exactly. Now feel this. I guided his other hand to the silk tablecloth nearby. This is silk, smooth and cool, completely different from the bark. Can you feel the difference? Yes, this one is soft, like my blanket. That's right. I moved his hand to the carpet. And this is carpet, bumpy, kind of rough, but softer than the bark. The whole room is covered in this dark red carpet. Dark red is like cherry juice, or like how velvet feels when you run your fingers against the grain. Silas giggled, his whole face transforming with joy. How does a color feel? Colors have textures and temperatures, I explained, something I'd learned from years of describing the world to Ethan. Red feels warm, like sitting near a fire. Blue feels cool, like water. Yellow feels bright and energetic, like sunshine on your face. What color is your voice? Silas asked, tilting his head in that curious way. I smiled even though he couldn't see it. Something in my expression must have carried into my voice because he smiled back. What do you think my voice sounds like? Silas considered this seriously. Honey, warm honey. My heart stuttered in my chest. Ethan used to say the same thing. That's a beautiful answer, I said softly. Can I tell you what the room looks like? Yes, please. I described the ballroom in sensory terms he could understand. The chandelier that made tinkling sounds like little bells when the air conditioning kicked on. The high ceiling that would make voices echo if someone shouted. The smooth marble floor in the main room that felt cold even through shoes. The heavy velvet curtains that blocked out the city lights. Silas listened with rapt attention, his smile growing wider with each detail. Can you tell me more? He asked when I paused. No one ever tells me about things. That sentence hit me like a physical blow. No one ever tells me about things. This child, this beautiful, curious, intelligent child had been sitting in rooms full of people his entire life, and no one had bothered to describe the world to him. I can tell you as much as you want, I said, but first, can I ask you something? Okay. How long have you been sitting here by yourself? Silas's smile dimmed slightly. Since we got here, my dad's had to talk to important people. They said to stay here and be good. And have you been good? Yes, I've been very quiet. You have, I agreed, my jaw clenched with anger at the parents who'd left him here alone, at the event staff who'd walked past him a dozen times without checking if he was okay, at every single adult in this room who decided it was easier to ignore him than to simply be kind. But you know what? You don't have to be quiet all the time. Would you like to do something fun? Silas's entire face brightened. Really? Really. What do you like to do? I like sounds, and textures, and being tall. Being tall? He nodded vigorously. When someone picks me up, I can feel how much bigger the room is. I can hear things better when I'm higher up, but no one picks me up anymore. They say I'm too big. You're not too big, I thought. You're 5 years old and you weigh maybe 40 pounds, soaking wet. Would you like me to pick you up? I asked gently. Silas's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Hope, disbelief, cautious excitement. Are you allowed to? The question broke my heart. This child was asking permission to be held like it was some kind of privilege he didn't deserve. I'm asking if you want me to, I said. If you say yes, then I'm allowed to. Yes, Silas said immediately. Yes, please pick me up. I set my clipboard down on a nearby chair and carefully lifted Silas into my arms. He was lighter than I expected, his small body fitting perfectly against my chest. His arms came around my neck immediately, and he pressed his face into my shoulder with a sigh that sounded like relief. You smell nice, he whispered against my collar, like honey and wood. Thank you, I said, adjusting my grip to make sure he was comfortable. Is this tall enough? He lifted his head, turning his face toward the room. It's perfect. Tell me what you see from up here. So I did. I described the adults clustered near the bar and their elegant clothes, the colors of their gowns and suits. I described the other children playing, what games they were playing, how their faces looked when they laughed. I described the servers moving through the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres that smelled like cheese and herbs. Silas absorbed every word. asking questions, making observations that were startlingly perceptive for someone so young. He was brilliant. Any idiot could see that. But apparently everyone in this ballroom had decided it was easier to see him as cursed than to see him as a child. Asher, Silas said, after I'd been holding him for several minutes. Yes? You're the first person who's talked to me like this, who tells me about things, who picks me up when I ask. My throat closed. I'm sorry that's true. It's okay. I'm used to it. He said it so matter-of-factly, with such resignation, that I wanted to find every adult in this room and shake them until they understood what they'd done to this child. It's not okay, I said quietly. You deserve better. Silas was quiet for a moment. Then, will you be my friend? Yes, I said without hesitation. I'd be honored to be your friend. He hugged me tighter, his small arms surprisingly strong around my neck, and for just a moment, I let myself imagine that I could fix this. That I could be the person who made sure Silas knew he was valued and loved and worthy of every good thing. That's when I heard the voices. 3 of them, identical in tone and cadence, speaking in perfect unison. Put our son down. Now. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Conversations stopped. Parents turned to stare. Even the children playing nearby went quiet, sensing something dangerous in the air. I turned slowly, keeping Silas secure in my arms, and found myself facing 3 of the most imposing men I'd ever seen. They were identical. Triplets, obviously, though each had subtle differences that only showed up on close inspection. Same height, easily 6'4". Same build, broad shoulders, narrow waists, the kind of physiques that came from personal trainers and expensive gym memberships. Same sharp features, same steel gray eyes, same dark hair, styled with precision. They wore matching black suits that probably cost more than my car. Their scents hit me like a wall alpha pheromones, dominant and aggressive, flooding the space with a clear message. Threat, danger, back off. The one in the center spoke first, his voice cold enough to frost glass. Who are you, and why are you touching our child? I kept my voice level, despite my racing heart. I'm Asher Brooks. I'm event staff. Your son asked me to pick him up. The one on the left tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing. Our son doesn't ask strangers for anything. He asked me, I said simply. The one on the right stepped forward, his gaze intense and searching. How did you know he's blind? Did someone tell you about him? I met his stare directly. I could tell, because I've seen it before. My brother was blind. Was, the center one repeated, catching the past tense immediately. My jaw clenched. He died 3 years ago. The triplets exchanged a glance, some kind of wordless communication passing between them. Before any of them could respond, Silas grabbed a fistful of my shirt and pressed closer against my chest. Don't go, he said, his voice muffled but desperate. Please don't go. You're the only person who's talked to me all night. The center alpha's expression flickered something that might have been guilt or pain crossing his face before the cold mask slammed back down. Silas, he said, his voice gentling slightly. Come here. No. Silas's grip tightened on my shirt. I want to stay with Asher. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was the grief I'd been carrying for 3 years. Maybe it was seeing another blind child being failed by the adults who were supposed to protect him. Maybe it was the rage that had been building since I'd watched that mother yank her daughter away like Silas was contagious. Whatever it was, I looked at these 3 powerful, wealthy, imposing alphas, and I let them have it. Where were you? My voice came out sharp, cutting. While your son sat alone in this corner for over an hour? While every parent here taught their children to avoid him like he's cursed? While he begged someone, anyone, to notice him? The center alpha's eyes went hard. You have no right. I have every right, I interrupted, my voice rising. Because I was the only person in this entire ballroom who bothered to see him as a child instead of a tragedy. I was the only one who asked him his name, who talked to him, who treated him like he matters. The room had gone completely silent now. I could feel hundreds of eyes on us, could sense the scandalized horror radiating from the watching parents. I didn't care. The left alpha stepped forward, his scent sharpening with anger. You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me, I demanded. Explain why your son sat alone while you were networking. Explain why he's learned to make himself small and quiet because that's what everyone expects from him. Explain why he asked me if I was allowed to pick him up, like being held as some kind of privilege he doesn't deserve. The right alpha's voice came out tight and controlled. That is absolutely enough. No, it's not enough, my voice cracked. Do you know what they're saying about him? About you? That you did something dark to get your wealth? That his blindness is a curse, a punishment? That he's contaminated and anyone who gets close to him will suffer? And instead of protecting him from those lies, you left him alone where everyone could see him being abandoned by his own fathers. Silas made a small sound against my shoulder, somewhere between a whimper and a sob. I shifted him in my arms, held him tighter, silently promising him that I wasn't letting go. The center alpha's face had gone pale, a muscle ticking in his jaw. You need to watch your tone. Why? I shot back. Because you don't want to hear the truth? Because it's easier to throw your weight around than to acknowledge that you failed him tonight? That's enough, a new voice cut through the tension. My boss, Gerald Westbrook, stormed across the ballroom with his face flushed red with fury. Mr. Brooks, you're finished here. Get out. My stomach dropped to my feet. No, please, You just disrespected 3 of our most important clients in front of 500 guests. Gerald snarled, grabbing my arm roughly. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The world tilted sideways. I needed this job. I had rent due in 5 days, student loans from a degree I'd never finished, medical bills from Ethan's final hospital stay that I was still paying off. I had nothing saved, no safety net, nowhere to go. Please, I said, hating how my voice shook. I can't afford to lose this job. I'll apologize. Too late for apologies, Gerald said coldly. You made your choice. Now live with it. Security. 2 large men in suits appeared at my sides. I looked at the triplets desperately, hoping for what? Mercy? Understanding? Some acknowledgement that I'd been right? Their faces were unreadable, cold, distant. I'm sorry, I said to them, even though I wasn't sorry for what I'd said, only sorry that it had cost me everything. I didn't mean to. You should go, the center alpha said quietly. And that's when Silas started crying. Not loud, theatrical sobs. Quiet, desperate tears that shook his small body. He lifted his head from my shoulder and reached toward where he must have heard his father's voices. Please don't make him go, Silas begged, his words tumbling over each other. Please, he's nice. He talks to me. He tells me about things. Please don't make him leave like everyone else leaves. Please, please. One of the security guards tried to take Silas from my arms. The boy screamed a raw, animal sound of pure terror and clung to me with desperate strength. Don't go. Silas sobbed. Don't leave me. Everyone leaves. Everyone. Please don't go. I dropped to my knees, still holding Silas, my own eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. I cupped his small face in my hands, feeling the wetness of his tears against my palms. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice breaking. I have to go, but you're going to be okay. You're strong and brilliant and wonderful, and someday you'll be surrounded by people who see that, I promise. Silas shook his head violently. No, you promised you'd be my friend. You promised. I know, and I meant it, but security grabbed my arms, hauling me to my feet. Silas's grip on my shirt finally broke. He reached for me with empty hands, his cries turning silent, now mouth open, tears streaming, no sound coming out because he'd learned long ago that screaming didn't help. I saw that expression on his face, and something in me died. Security dragged me toward the exit. The crowd parted around us, faces ranging from shocked to satisfied to uncomfortable. I saw the mother who'd called Silas cursed, watching with obvious approval. Behind me, I heard one of the triplets say something in a low, urgent voice. Heard someone trying to comfort Silas. Heard the boy's silent sobs continue. Then, I was shoved through the hotel's glass doors and out into the night. The rain hit me immediately, cold and heavy and relentless. Within seconds, I was soaked through, standing on the sidewalk in my work uniform with nowhere to go and nothing but the clothes on my back. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with numb fingers. A notification for a photo that I'd saved 3 years ago appeared on my screen. Ethan, grinning at the camera with that bright, beautiful smile that made everyone who met him fall in love with him immediately, My little brother, the person I'd failed to protect. The grief hit me like a tsunami. I'd promised Ethan I'd keep him safe, promised our parents after they died that I'd take care of him, and I'd failed. I'd been on my phone, distracted by a work email, when Ethan had tripped at the park. He'd fallen wrong, broken his neck, died before the ambulance arrived. I'd held him while he died, watched the light leave his eyes, carried that guilt every single day since. And tonight I'd found another child who needed protecting, another blind boy who deserved someone to fight for him, and I'd failed him too. The rain poured harder. I stood there, soaked and shaking, staring at Ethan's photo, and then I saw him. Across the street, standing under a flickering streetlight, wearing the same clothes he'd been wearing the day he died. Ethan, my brother, alive, smiling, waving at me. My rational brain knew it wasn't real, knew it was grief and exhaustion and the guilt that never left me. But my heart didn't care, because there was my brother, and he was calling me home. I stepped off the curb. "Ethan!" I shouted, starting to run toward him. He smiled wider, beckoning me closer. I ran faster, rain streaming into my eyes, my feet pounding on wet pavement. Cars honked, but I didn't hear them. I didn't hear anything except the roaring in my ears and the desperate need to reach my brother. The headlights came from my right, moving fast, too fast. I turned my head and saw the car's grill filling my vision, saw the driver's horrified face through the windshield. Then, the world exploded into pain and light and darkness, and I didn't see anything at all. I woke up to white. White ceiling, white walls, white sheets. The sterile smell of hospital disinfectant. The steady beep of monitors. Pain radiating from what felt like every part of my body. I tried to move and immediately regretted it. My left leg was in a cast. My ribs screamed in protest. My head felt like someone had taken a hammer to it. "You're awake." A nurse appeared in my field of vision, her face professionally kind. "Don't try to move too much. You've been through quite an ordeal." "How long?" My voice came out as a croak. 5 days. You've been in and out of consciousness. Do you remember what happened?" 5 days. I'd been here for 5 days. "I was hit by a car," I managed. "Yes. You ran into traffic during a rainstorm. The driver said you were chasing someone, but there was no one there." Her expression shifted to concern. "Is there someone we should call? Family?" "No family." The words hurt more than my broken ribs. No one to call. The nurse's sympathy was worse than if she'd just left. She adjusted my IV, checked my vitals, explained my injuries in medical terms I barely processed. Broken leg, 3 fractured ribs, concussion, contusions, lacerations. "The psychiatric team will want to talk to you," she added gently. "About what you were chasing, about whether you're a danger to yourself." I closed my eyes. Of course, because running into traffic chasing hallucinations definitely suggested mental instability, and she wasn't wrong. After she left, I lay there staring at the ceiling, taking inventory of the wreckage of my life. No job, medical bills I couldn't pay, probably going to lose my apartment, and now apparently losing my mind too. The only bright spot in any of it had been 7 minutes with a little boy named Silas, and I'd lost him too. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes again, there were 3 men standing at the foot of my hospital bed. The triplets. They looked exactly as I remembered imposing, identical, expensive suits, perfectly tailored. But their expressions were different now. Less cold. More complicated. "Mr. Brooks," the one in the center said, "we need to talk." I tried to sit up, gasped at the pain, settled for turning my head to look at them properly. "What are you doing here?" "We came to see how you were recovering," the one on the left said. "And to offer you something," the one on the right added. I blinked at them, confused. "I don't understand." The center one pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. Now that I could study them more carefully, I noticed the subtle differences. This one had a small scar through his left eyebrow. His expression was harder, more guarded than the other two. "I'm Roderick Sinclair," he said. "My brothers are Maxwell and Tobias. We're co-CEOs of Sinclair Industries." "I know who you are," I said quietly. "Everyone knows who you are." Roderick's mouth twitched slightly. "Then you know we have the resources to find out anything we want about anyone." My stomach clenched. You investigated me. We did, Maxwell confirmed, pulling up a second chair. He was the one with the slightly warmer expression, though warm was relative when it came to these three. Asher Brooks, 25, worked for Prestige Catering for 3 years, exemplary employment record until 5 nights ago. Before that, various service jobs. You were studying to be a teacher before you dropped out after your brother's death. Ethan Brooks, Tobias added, taking the third chair. He was the quietest of the three, but his eyes were the most intense. Died 3 years ago from a fall at Riverside Park. You were with him when it happened. Stop, I said, my voice cracking. Why are you telling me things I already know? Because we need you to understand that we know exactly who you are, Roderick said. We know about your grief. We know about your guilt. We know you see your brother's ghost. I flinched. The nurse told you. The hospital administrator told us, Maxwell corrected, after we made a generous donation to the hospital's children's wing. Of course you did. I laughed bitterly. Is there a point to this? Because if you came here to gloat or threaten me or... We came to apologize, Tobias said quietly. That stopped me cold. What? Roderick leaned forward, his expression serious. You were right, about all of it. We left Silas alone at that gala while we handled business. We've been so focused on protecting him from the rumors that we didn't realize we were abandoning him in the process. We were so concerned with shielding him from people who might hurt him that we failed to see he was already hurting, Maxwell added, his voice heavy with regret. And then someone finally showed him kindness, and we responded by having him ripped away from you, Tobias finished. We were wrong. I stared at them, unable to process what I was hearing. You came all the way here to apologize? We came here for 2 reasons, Roderick said. The apology is the first. The second is a job offer. A job offer? I repeated flatly. Maxwell pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and set it on the bedside table. We want to hire you as Silas's full-time caretaker, live-in position at our estate. Salary, benefits, medical coverage, all included. I looked at the envelope like it might explode. You're joking. We're not, Tobias said. Silas hasn't spoken since the gala. Hasn't eaten properly. Hasn't smiled. We've tried everything, new toys, different nannies, child psychologists. Nothing works. He keeps asking for you, Maxwell said softly. He signs your name over and over, just Asher, Asher, Asher. My throat closed. He signs? We taught him sign language when he was 3, Roderick explained. We thought it would give him another way to communicate, another connection to the world. But right now, all he's using it for is asking for someone he met for 7 minutes. You were the first person who treated him like he mattered, Tobias said. The first person who took the time to describe the world to him, to hold him, to make him feel valued. And when you were taken away, it confirmed every fear he's ever had that people leave, that he's not worth staying for, that he's better off invisible. We can't fix that, Maxwell said, but you can, if you're willing. I wanted to say no. Wanted to tell them I was too broken, too unstable, too much of a liability, that I was seeing ghosts and running into traffic and clearly not safe to be around a vulnerable child. But then I thought about Silas, about his small hand in mine, about the joy on his face when I described textures and colors, about the way he'd clung to me and begged me not to leave. Why me? I asked. You could hire anyone, professional caregivers with actual credentials. Why would you want someone with a psychiatric evaluation pending? Because our son wants you, Roderick said simply. And we've learned the hard way that sometimes what our son needs matters more than what's safe or logical or convenient. We'll get you help, Maxwell added. Therapy, medication, whatever you need to manage your grief and the hallucinations. But we need you to say yes. Tobias met my eyes directly. We're not asking you to be perfect. We're asking you to be present. To be the person you were that night. The one who saw our son and decided he was worth 7 minutes of your time. I looked at the envelope, then at my cast, then at the monitors tracking my failing body. I had nothing. No job, no home, no future. Just grief and guilt and a ghost I couldn't stop chasing. But maybe, just maybe, I could give one little boy the thing I'd failed to give my brother. Someone who stayed. Someone who saw him. Someone who fought for him even when it cost everything. When do I start? I heard myself say. The Sinclair estate was obscene in the way only truly generational wealth could be. I stood in the marble entryway with my single duffel bag, everything I owned that hadn't been left behind in my now empty apartment, and tried not to feel like I'd stumbled into a museum by accident. Crystal chandeliers, original artwork on the walls, staircases that belonged in movies, windows that stretched 2 stories high with views of gardens that probably required a full-time staff to maintain. A kind-faced woman in her 50s appeared, introducing herself as Margaret, the head of household staff. She showed me to my room on the second floor, a suite larger than my entire previous apartment, with a king-size bed, sitting area, ensuite bathroom with a tub I could practically swim in, and those same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking grounds that seemed to go on forever. "Mr. Silas's room is just down the hall," Margaret said, her voice gentle. "Third door on the left. He's been asking about you every day." My chest tightened. "Is he? How is he?" Margaret's expression grew sad. "He'll be better once he sees you. The poor lamb has barely eaten since the gala. Just sits by his window all day." She left me to settle in, but I couldn't sit still. I dropped my bag on the bed and headed straight for the hallway, counting doors. 1, 2, 3. I knocked softly. No answer. I knocked again. "Silas? It's Asher. Can I come in?" For a moment, nothing. Then the soft sound of small feet pattering across the floor. The door handle turned. The door opened. Silas stood in the doorway looking smaller than I remembered. He wore soft pajamas despite it being mid-afternoon. His hair was messy, like no one had combed it in days. His face was pale, his eyes rimmed with red from crying. "Asher?" he whispered, his voice uncertain, like he was afraid I was another dream that would disappear. "Hey, buddy," I said, my own voice rough with emotion. "I'm here." Silas's face crumpled. He launched himself at me, wrapping his arms around my waist and burying his face in my stomach with desperate force. His small body shook with sobs. I dropped to my knees and pulled him close, holding him while he cried. "I'm sorry." I murmured against his hair. "I'm so sorry I left. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere." "You promise?" Silas managed between sobs. "You promise you won't leave?" "I promise. I have a job here now. I get to spend every day with you." Silas pulled back just enough to look at me, his unfocused eyes aimed somewhere near my face. "Really? Every day?" "Every single day, if you want me to." "I want you to," Silas said immediately, hugging me again. "I missed you so much. I thought you were gone forever, like—" He stopped himself. "Like who?" I asked gently. "Like my mom," Silas whispered. "Everyone says she left because of me, because I'm cursed." My heart shattered. I cupped his face in my hands, making sure he could feel the certainty in my touch. "Silas, listen to me very carefully. You are not cursed. Your mom didn't leave because of you, and I'm not leaving either, okay?" "Okay," Silas said, but his voice was small and uncertain. I spent the next hour in Silas's room, just being present. He showed me his toys, mostly textured items, things he could explore by touch, carved wooden animals, puzzles with raised pieces, musical instruments, books in Braille that he was just beginning to learn. "My dad's got me all these things," Silas explained, running his fingers over a intricately carved wooden elephant. "They try really hard to find me toys I can play with, but it's more fun when someone plays with me." "Then let's play," I said. We built towers with blocks and knocked them down to hear the crash. We played with modeling clay, creating shapes and textures. Silas showed me how he was learning Braille, his small fingers moving across the raised dots with increasing confidence. "You're really good at this," I told him. Silas beamed. "I practice every day. I want to read books like other kids." "You will. You're brilliant, Silas. You know that, right?" He ducked his head shyly. "That's what my dads say. But sometimes I think they just say it to be nice." "I'm not just being nice. You are genuinely, truly brilliant, and anyone who doesn't see that is missing out." The door opened. All 3 triplets stood in the doorway, still in their work suits. They must have come straight from the office. Silas's head turned toward the sound. "Dads!" Roderick entered first, his expression softening when he saw his son actually smiling. "Hey, buddy," We heard you had a visitor. Asher's here, Silas announced. He's here, and he's staying, and he promised not to leave. Maxwell exchanged a glance with his brothers. We're glad Asher's here, too. Tobias knelt down beside us. Have you been having fun? So much fun. Asher played blocks with me and helped me with my braille, and he said I'm brilliant. Because you are, I said quietly. The triplets looked at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Gratitude, maybe. Relief. Something else underneath that felt heavier. Roderick cleared his throat. Silas, why don't you show Asher your music box? The one with all the different sounds? Okay. Silas ran to his shelf, navigating his room with practiced ease. He knew every inch of this space. Roderick gestured for me to step into the hallway. I followed, and his brothers came with us. The door stayed open so we could hear Silas playing with his music box. We need to explain something to you, Maxwell said quietly. About Silas. About where he came from. Okay, I said carefully. Tobias crossed his arms. You're probably wondering how 3 alpha brothers have 1 son. I nodded. The thought crossed my mind. We had a mate, Roderick said, his voice going rough. Lydia. Our fated Omega. All 3 of us bonded with her 5 years ago. My eyes widened. Multi-alpha bonds were rare, but not unheard of. All 3 of you? Yes, Maxwell continued. In multi-alpha packs, the Omega typically carries 1 child from each bonded alpha. Lydia was pregnant with triplets, 1 from each of us. My stomach dropped. Was? She had a pre-existing heart condition we didn't know about. Tobias said, his jaw tight. The pregnancy put too much strain on her body. She went into early labor at 28 weeks. There were complications. The doctors could only save 1 of the babies. Silas, I breathed. Yes. Roderick's hands clenched at his sides. She died, giving birth to him. Our other 2 sons died with her. Silas is all we have left. The weight of that settled over me like a heavy blanket. I'm so sorry. His blindness isn't related to the difficult birth. Maxwell added, it's genetic, inherited from Lydia's side of the family. But people don't care about medical facts. They want a story, so they created one. That you did something dark to get your wealth and your son's blindness was the price, I said quietly, remembering the whispers at the gala. Exactly, Tobias confirmed. We've tried to combat the rumors with facts, with medical records, with explanations. But people believe what they want to believe. Roderick's expression hardened. What we haven't told you is that we blame ourselves. We pushed Lydia to have children even though we knew multi-alpha pregnancies were high risk. We were so focused on building our legacy that we didn't protect her the way we should have. And now we're terrified of failing Silas the same way. Maxwell said, we work too much, we're too protective, we don't know how to balance keeping him safe with letting him live. That night at the gala, we left him alone because we thought he was safer sitting quietly than interacting with people who might hurt him. Tobias explained. We didn't realize we were hurting him more than anyone else could. I looked through the doorway at Silas, who was carefully winding his music box, listening to the tinkling melody with obvious delight. He's not fragile, I said. He's blind, not broken. He needs protection, yes. But he also needs to explore the world. Make friends, have adventures. You can't keep him in a bubble just because you're afraid of losing him too. We know, Roderick said. That's why you're here, to help us figure out how to do this right. Over the next few days, I settled into a routine with Silas. Mornings were for exploration, we'd walk the estate grounds, and I'd describe everything we encountered. The koi pond with its fish that made soft splashing sounds. The rose garden with its dozens of varieties, each with different textures and scents. The marble fountain that echoed when Silas clapped his hands near it. Afternoons were for learning. I worked with Silas on his braille, helped him develop his spatial awareness, taught him how to navigate new spaces safely. He was a quick learner, absorbing information like a sponge. Evenings were for stories. I'd read to Silas from his favorite books, doing different voices for each character. He'd giggle and ask me to read chapters over and over, memorizing the stories until he could recite them along with me. The triplets watched from the sidelines, gradually learning how to interact with their son in new ways. I taught Roderick how to describe visual things in tactile terms. He started bringing Silas materials from his office contract paper with its distinct texture, leather portfolios, the smooth weight of expensive pens. I showed Maxwell how to make everyday activities educational. Cooking became a lesson in temperature and texture and smell. Walking became a game of counting steps and identifying sounds. I helped Tobias understand that Silas didn't need to be shielded from everything. That bumping into furniture was how he learned spatial boundaries. That falling down occasionally was part of developing balance and confidence. Slowly, the triplets relaxed, started trusting both Silas and themselves more, and I started falling for them. It happened in small moments. Roderick bringing me coffee every morning without being asked, his fingers brushing mine as I took the cup. Maxwell's laugh when Silas said something particularly clever, the way his whole face transformed. Tobias, sitting next to me during story time, his shoulder warm against mine. Their scents, coffee and leather, sandalwood and rain, pine and steel, started to feel like home instead of threat. I caught myself watching them, noticing the way Roderick's jaw tightened when he was concentrating, the way Maxwell ran his hand through his hair when he was tired, the way Tobias's eyes softened when he looked at his son. I was falling in love with all three of them, and it terrified me. Because I was still broken, still seeing Ethan's ghost in windows and mirrors, still waking up in cold sweats from nightmares about his death. I'd started therapy at the triplets' insistence, twice-a-week sessions with Dr. Helena Reeves, the same psychologist who'd recommended they find me. She was patient and kind and completely unwilling to let me avoid the hard truths. "You're using Silas as a replacement for your brother," she said during our third session. "Trying to save him the way you couldn't save Ethan." "That's not true," I protested. "Isn't it? You threw away your career, risked your safety, and ran into traffic all within hours of meeting him. That's not rational protectiveness. That's transference." I hated that she was right. She prescribed medication for the hallucinations, antipsychotics that made me foggy and nauseous, but did reduce the frequency of seeing Ethan. I took them religiously because I couldn't risk having an episode around Silas. But the grief never went away. It just became something I carried differently. 2 weeks into my new job, I was watching Silas play near the estate's pool when it happened. The pool was beautiful infinity edge, crystal clear water, surrounded by safety railings. Silas wasn't allowed near it without supervision. I was the supervision. He was playing with a ball, rolling it back and forth on the deck, listening to the sound it made. I was sitting nearby, reading through some educational materials Dr. Reeves had recommended. Then I saw Ethan. He was standing on the other side of the pool, looking exactly as he had the day he died. Same clothes, same expression, real enough that I could count the freckles across his nose. "Asher," he said, his voice clear and achingly familiar. "I've been looking for you." My breath stopped. The book slipped from my hands. "You left me," Ethan continued, walking around the edge of the pool toward me. "You let me die, and then you forgot about me." "I didn't forget," I whispered, knowing he wasn't real but unable to stop myself from responding. "I think about you every day." "Then why are you here with them instead of me?" Ethan's face twisted with hurt. "Why did you move on?" "I didn't move on. I'm trying to live." "By replacing me with another blind kid?" Ethan's voice turned bitter. "By pretending you can save him when you couldn't save me?" My vision tunneled. The world narrowed to just Ethan's face, his eyes, his accusatory expression. "Come here," Ethan said, beckoning me closer to the pool. "Come with me. Stop running away." My feet moved without my permission. 1 step, 2. Closer to the edge of the pool. Behind me, dimly, I heard Silas call my name, but Ethan's voice was louder. "Jump," Ethan said. "End this. You know you want to." I reached the edge of the pool, looked down at the water, saw Ethan's reflection looking back at me, lifted my foot to step in. Strong hands grabbed my shoulders and yanked me backwards so hard I crashed to the ground. The impact jolted me back to reality. Tobias's face swam into focus above me, pale and terrified. "What the hell were you doing?" I looked around wildly. The pool. Silas standing several feet away, his small body trembling, reaching toward me with confused, frightened hands. No Ethan. Just me and Tobias and the child I'd nearly abandoned while chasing a ghost. "I saw him," I managed, my voice shaking. "I saw Ethan. He was right there." Tobias's grip on my shoulders tightened. There was no one there, Asher. Just you walking toward the pool like you were going to jump in. Roderick and Maxwell came running, alerted by Tobias's shout. They took in the scene, me on the ground, Silas crying, Tobias's white-knuckled grip on my shoulders. What happened? Roderick demanded. He had an episode, Tobias said. Almost walked into the pool. Maxwell immediately went to Silas, scooping him up and checking him over. Are you okay, buddy? What happened to Asher? Silas sobbed. Why was he walking funny? Why did Uncle Toby yell? Asher's sick right now, Maxwell said gently. But he's okay. We've got him. Roderick knelt beside me, his expression unreadable. Did you take your medication this morning? I closed my eyes, shame burning through me. Yes. Truth, Asher. Yes, I repeated. I took it. I take it every day. It wasn't enough. Tobias helped me sit up. My hands were shaking badly now, adrenaline and fear and horror at what I'd almost done flooding through me. That night, the triplets sat me down in their private study. We can't let you continue as Silas's caretaker, Roderick said, his voice careful and controlled. Not after what happened today. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. But you're not leaving, Maxwell added quickly. We're going to help you. We're hiring a professional to work with Silas during the day. You'll stay here, focus on treatment, get better. You don't have to do that, I said. I can go. I should go. Where? Tobias asked bluntly. You have nowhere to go, and we're not abandoning you. Why not? The question came out broken. I'm a danger to your son. I'm unstable. You should want me gone. Roderick leaned forward, his eyes intense. Because our son loves you, because you showed him kindness when no one else would, because you defended him at the cost of everything you had. That kind of loyalty, that kind of heart, it deserves protection. We failed, Lydia, Maxwell said quietly. We pushed too hard, wanted too much, didn't see the warning signs until it was too late. We're not making that mistake again. You need help, and we're going to make sure you get it. Even if it means I can never be around Silas again? We'll figure it out, Tobias said. Together. But first, you heal. Really, heal. The next morning, I woke to find Roderick in my room, sitting in the chair by the window with 2 cups of coffee. You brought me coffee? I said, confused. I bring you coffee every morning, Roderick said. That doesn't stop just because you're taking a break from caretaking duties. He handed me the cup. Our fingers brushed. The touch sent warmth through my chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. You should hate me, I said. I almost let your son fall in the pool because I was too busy chasing ghosts. You didn't let anything happen. Silas was never in danger. You were the one in danger. That doesn't make it better. No. But it means you're not malicious or neglectful. You're sick. And sick people deserve help, not hatred. I took a sip of coffee to hide the fact that tears were burning in my eyes. I don't know how to stop seeing him. Then we'll figure it out. I've already contacted 3 of the top psychiatric specialists in the country. We'll find someone who can help. Why do you care this much? Roderick was quiet for a long moment, studying his own coffee cup. Then, because I know what it's like to lose someone and blame yourself, to work yourself into the ground trying to make up for it, to be so terrified of failing again that you can't see straight. Lydia, I said softly. Yes, and I won't watch someone else destroy themselves with guilt. Not if I can help it. Over the following weeks, the triplets kept their promise. They hired a professional caretaker for Silas during the day, a kind beta woman named Sharon, who had 15 years of experience working with blind children. Silas liked her well enough, though he asked for me constantly, and they focused on getting me help. I saw Dr. Reeves 4 times a week instead of 2. My medication was adjusted, then adjusted again. I attended group therapy for grief and loss. I learned coping mechanisms for when the hallucinations hit. And through it all, the triplets were there. Roderick brought me coffee every morning and sat with me while I drank it, talking about nothing important, just being present. Maxwell researched everything about grief-induced psychosis, becoming an expert so he could understand what I was going through. He'd quiz the doctors, advocate for me, make sure I was getting the best care. Tobias sat with me during the worst nights, when the medication made me nauseous or the grief felt too heavy to carry. He didn't try to fix it, just stayed. Their presence became the thing that kept me grounded. 1 month into treatment, I realized I was falling in love with them, not in spite of my brokenness, but because they saw my brokenness and chose to stay anyway. I tried to fight it, tried to maintain professional distance, tried to remind myself that they were my employers, that this was temporary, that I had no right to feel anything for them. But it was hopeless. I was in love with Roderick's quiet strength, the way he carried the weight of responsibility for his whole family without complaint. I was in love with Maxwell's gentle humor, how he could make me laugh even on the darkest days. I was in love with Tobias's fierce protectiveness, how he watched over everyone he cared about with unwavering dedication. And I was terrified they'd never feel the same way about someone as broken as me. 2 months in, I had my first full week without hallucinations. 7 days of waking up without seeing Ethan. 7 days of being able to trust what my eyes showed me. 7 days of clarity that felt like learning to breathe again. Dr. Reeves called it a breakthrough. I called it a miracle. "You're not cured," she warned me. "This is a chronic condition. You'll have good periods and bad periods, but you're learning to manage it." "I want to see Silas," I said. She hesitated. "Are you sure you're ready?" "I need to try." I promised him I wouldn't leave. I need to keep that promise. She consulted with the triplets. They agreed to supervise visits, me and Silas, with one of his fathers always present. The first visit was in Silas's room. He was playing with his Braille books when I knocked on the door. Maxwell let me in. Silas's head whipped toward the sound of the door. "Who's there?" he asked. "It's Asher," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I've missed you, buddy." Silas went completely still. Then he scrambled off his bed and ran straight to me, crashing into my legs with desperate force. "You came back," he sobbed. "I thought you left forever." I dropped to my knees and pulled him close. "I promised I wouldn't leave, remember? I just needed some time to get better." "Are you better now?" "I'm getting there. It takes time." Silas pulled back enough to look at me, his hands coming up to touch my face. His small fingers traced my features, forehead, eyebrows, nose, mouth, chin, mapping me through touch. "You feel the same," he said with relief. "I was worried you'd be different. Still me, just a little less sick." "I'm glad you're less sick." Silas hugged me again. "I missed you so much. Sharon's nice, but she's not you. I missed you too." Maxwell watched us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something tender and complicated and full of hope. We spent the next hour just being together. I helped Silas with his Braille. We built towers and knocked them down. I described the clouds outside his window in ridiculous detail until he giggled. When it was time for me to leave, Silas clung to me. "Promise you'll come back tomorrow?" "I promise." "And the day after?" "Yes." "And every day forever?" I looked at Maxwell, who nodded encouragingly. "Every day that I can," I said carefully. "Some days I might still be sick and need to rest, but I'll always come back." "Okay," Silas hugged me one more time. "I love you, Asher." The words hit me like a physical blow. Unexpected, overwhelming, perfect. "I love you too, Silas." After I left Silas's room, Maxwell walked me back to mine. "That was good," he said. "Really good. You're good for him. He's good for me too." Maxwell stopped in the hallway, turning to face me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Are you happy here, living with us, working with Silas, being part of this strange situation?" I considered the question carefully. "Yes, happier than I've been since Ethan died, which terrifies me." "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I don't know if I deserve it, and because I'm afraid of what happens when you realize I'm too broken to keep around." Maxwell's expression softened. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and cupped my face gently. "Asher, you're not too broken. You're healing. There's a difference. What if I'm never fully healed? Then you'll be beautifully imperfect, just like the rest of us." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. The touch sent electricity through my entire body. "Maxwell, I know," he said quietly. "I feel it too." Then he dropped his hand and stepped back, professional distance sliding back into place like a mask. "Get some rest. You did really well today." He walked away, leaving me standing in the hallway, with my heart racing and my head spinning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Maxwell's words. I feel it too. What did that mean? Did he feel the same confusing mix of professional obligation and personal desire? Did he feel the pull I felt every time one of them was near? I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the soft knock on my door. I opened it to find all three triplets standing in the hallway, still dressed in the clothes they'd worn to dinner. They looked uncertain, in a way I'd never seen from them before. "Can we come in?" Roderick asked. I stepped aside, too confused to do anything else. They filed into my room and stood in an awkward semicircle, clearly having rehearsed what they were going to say but now struggling to get the words out. Finally, Tobias just blurted it. "We're in love with you." I blinked. "What?" "All three of us," Maxwell added. "We're falling in love with you. Have been for weeks now." "We know the timing is terrible," Roderick continued. "We know you're still healing. We know this situation is already complicated enough, but we needed you to know." I stared at them, my mind refusing to process what I was hearing. "You're in love with me?" "Yes," they said in unison. "All three of you?" "Yes. But I'm broken. I see ghosts. I almost walked into your pool. I can barely take care of myself, let alone—" "We don't need you to take care of us," Tobias interrupted. "We need you to let us take care of you." "We want to build something with you," Maxwell said. "When you're ready, if you're ready. A real relationship, a family." "With all three of you," I said, trying to wrap my head around it. "We're a pack," Roderick explained. "We lost our mate, and we thought we'd never bond with anyone again. But then you showed up and turned our entire world upside down. You showed us how to really see our son. You fought for him when no one else would. You're brave and kind and completely unsuited for the corporate world, which makes you perfect." "I'm not perfect," I protested weakly. "I'm a mess." "So are we," Maxwell said. "We're three workaholics who didn't know how to be fathers until you showed up. We're so terrified of losing people that we push them away before they can leave. We're controlling and overprotective, and we use money to solve problems that money can't fix. But together," Tobias said, "maybe we can be less of a mess." I looked between them, these three incredible men who'd somehow decided I was worth loving despite all evidence to the contrary. "I don't know if I can do this," I said honestly. "The idea of being in a relationship, of bonding with alphas, of being responsible for not hurting you or Silas, it's terrifying." "We're not asking you to decide right now," Roderick said gently. "We're just asking you to think about it, to consider the possibility that you could have this. Take all the time you need," Maxwell added. "We'll still be here." "Waiting," Tobias finished. They left me alone with my spinning thoughts and my racing heart and the possibility of something I'd never let myself imagine. The next morning, I woke up and forgot to take my medication. It wasn't intentional. I was so caught up in thinking about the triplets' confession, about what it would mean to actually try for a relationship with them, that I went through my morning routine on autopilot. Shower, dressed, breakfast with Silas and his fathers. Normal, domestic, perfect. I didn't realize my mistake until that night. I was getting ready for bed when Ethan appeared in my bathroom mirror. "You forgot about me," he said, his voice hurt and accusing. "You were so busy thinking about them that you forgot to take the medicine that keeps me away." I spun around. He was standing right behind me, solid and real. "You're not real," I said, trying to use the coping mechanisms Dr. Reeves had taught me. "I'm as real as your guilt," Ethan said, "and you're drowning in it. You think you can replace me with Silas? Replace our family with them? It doesn't work that way, Asher. You don't get to move on." "I'm not trying to replace you." "Aren't you?" Ethan's face twisted. "You're falling in love with them. You're building a life here. You're forgetting I ever existed." "That's not true. I think about you every day." "Liar." Ethan moved closer. "If you really loved me, you'd come with me. You'd stop abandoning me for people who will only hurt you." My chest tightened. The bathroom felt too small, too hot. I pushed past Ethan's ghost and stumbled into my bedroom. He followed. "You failed me once," Ethan said. "You'll fail them too. Fail Silas. Fail the triplets. Everyone you touch turns to dust." "Stop," I whispered, pressing my hands over my ears even though I knew it wouldn't help. "Jump," Ethan said, walking to the window and opening it. Cold night air rushed in. "End this. Stop hurting people. Come home to me. I walked to the window like a puppet on strings, looked down at the 3-story drop to the garden below. Ethan smiled and reached out his hand. I've missed you so much, Young. Don't you miss me? Every day, I said, tears streaming down my face. Every single day. Then come with me. I climbed onto the window ledge. The drop yawned below me. Ethan's hand was still reaching for mine. My foot began to move. The bedroom door crashed open. Asher! 3 voices screamed my name in perfect, terrified harmony. I turned my head. The triplets stood in my doorway, their faces white with horror. Don't, Roderick said, his voice shaking. Please don't. We need you, Maxwell added, stepping forward slowly. Please. You're not broken, Tobias said. You're sick, and sick people deserve help, not death. I looked back at Ethan. He was fading, becoming translucent. Don't listen to them, Ethan said desperately. They're lying. They'll leave you. Everyone leaves. We won't leave, Roderick said, moving closer. We'll never leave. We love you. We'll fight for you, Maxwell said. The way you fought for Silas. Please, Tobias said, his voice breaking. Please, come down. Let us help you. My foot slipped. For one terrible moment, I hung in the air, caught between the window ledge and nothing. Then strong hands grabbed me from both sides. Roderick and Tobias hauled me backward with desperate strength. We all crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only sob while the triplets held me, their hands running over me like they were checking to make sure I was really there, really alive. You're okay, Roderick kept saying. You're okay. We've got you. Maxwell's face appeared in my field of vision, his eyes wet with tears. Did you take your medication today? I shook my head. Okay, that's okay. We'll fix it. It's just one day. You're okay. But I wasn't okay. Because Silas was standing in the doorway, his small face crumpled with confusion and fear. What happened? He asked, his voice small. Why is everyone crying? Tobias went to him immediately, scooping him up. Asher's sick, buddy. Really sick, but he's gonna be okay. Is he dying like Mommy died? The question hit all of us like a truck. No, Tobias said firmly. No, he's not dying. We're going to make sure of it. Roderick called Dr. Reeves. She came to the house at midnight, evaluated me, adjusted my medication again. The triplets told her everything, the window, the hallucination, how close I'd come. He needs constant supervision for the next 72 hours, Dr. Reeves said, and we should consider inpatient treatment. No hospitals, I said immediately. Ethan had died in a hospital. I couldn't go back to one. Dr. Reeves looked at the triplets. Can you provide the supervision he needs? Yes, they said in unison. So I stayed. And for the next 3 days, I was never alone. The triplets set up a rotation. One of them was always with me, awake and vigilant. They made sure I took my medication on time, made sure I ate, made sure I didn't hurt myself. Roderick sat with me during the worst nights, when the medication made me too nauseous to sleep. He'd hold my hair back while I was sick, clean me up afterward without judgment, settle me back into bed with gentle hands. Maxwell talked to me for hours about nothing and everything. Shared stories about Lydia, about building their company, about the mistakes they'd made as fathers, made me feel less alone in my brokenness. Tobias read to me from books I'd loved as a child. His voice was soothing, steady, a constant anchor when my mind tried to drift toward dark places. And slowly, the fog cleared. The hallucinations faded. The medication levels stabilized. On the 4th day, I woke up clear-headed for the first time since the window incident. All 3 triplets were in my room, passed out in various chairs and positions. They looked exhausted, like they'd barely slept in days. Because they'd been watching over me. I started crying. Not from grief or fear or medication side effects, from overwhelming gratitude that these men had chosen to save me, over and over, even when I couldn't save myself. Roderick woke first, immediately alert. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'm sorry, I sobbed. I'm so sorry. You should have let me fall. I'm not worth all this trouble. Don't you dare, Roderick said fiercely, kneeling beside my bed. Don't you dare say you're not worth it. You're worth everything. Maxwell and Tobias woke up. immediately surrounding me. "We almost lost you," Maxwell said, his voice rough. "Do you understand that? We stood in that doorway and watched you about to jump, and we couldn't breathe. We couldn't function, because losing you would destroy us." "Why?" I asked. "Why do you care so much?" "Because we love you," Tobias said simply. "We told you that. We meant it. But I'm broken. We're all broken." Roderick interrupted. "We lost Lydia. We failed our sons. We nearly lost Silas to our own fear and overprotection. We're not looking for perfect, Asher. We're looking for you. Broken pieces and all," Maxwell added. "Because maybe together," Tobias said, "our broken pieces make something whole." I looked at them, these three men who'd seen me at my absolute worst, and decided I was still worth fighting for. "I want to try," I whispered. "I'm terrified and I don't know if I can do this, but I want to try. With you. All of you." The relief that washed over their faces was almost painful to witness. Roderick cupped my face in his hands. "We'll take it slow as you need." "We'll be patient," Maxwell promised. "We'll be here," Tobias said. "Always." Roderick leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. When I didn't, he kissed me with a gentleness that made my chest ache. When we broke apart, Maxwell was there. His kiss was different, warmer, deeper, filled with promises. Then Tobias, whose kiss felt like a claim, a vow, a declaration that I was his to protect. Their scents wrapped around me, coffee and leather, sandalwood and rain, pine and steel mixing with my own honey and cedar, until the whole room smelled like us, like pack, like home. "I love you," I said, the words easier than I expected. "All three of you. I don't know how this is supposed to work or if I'll be any good at it, but I love you." "That's all we need," Roderick said, pulling me close. "The rest we'll figure out together," Maxwell added. "As a family," Tobias finished. Recovery wasn't linear. I had good days and bad days. Days where the medication worked perfectly, and days where I still caught glimpses of Ethan in mirrors. Days where I felt strong enough to help with Silas, and days where I couldn't get out of bed. But through it all, the triplets were there. They hired a live-in nurse to monitor my medication and watch for warning signs. They made sure I never had access to windows without supervision. They attended every therapy session with me when Dr. Reeves said it would help. And gradually, I healed. 6 months after the window incident, Dr. Reeves cleared me to resume working with Silas full-time. "You've done the work," she said. "You understand your triggers. You have a support system. You're as ready as you'll ever be." Silas cried with joy when I told him. "Does this mean you're really staying?" he asked, his hands gripping mine tightly. "Forever and ever?" "Forever and ever," I confirmed. "And you're happy? You're not sad anymore?" I thought about it carefully. "I'm still sad sometimes. I still miss my brother, but I'm also happy, because I have you and your dads. And that makes the sad parts easier to carry." Silas hugged me. "I love you, Asher. You're my best friend." "You're my best friend, too." The triplets watched from the doorway with expressions of pure contentment. That night, they asked me to bond with them officially. We were in their private study, the four of us, the fire crackling in the fireplace. Roderick poured wine while Maxwell and Tobias sat on either side of me on the couch. "We want to make this official," Roderick said, handing me a glass. "A bonding ceremony, the four of us, creating a pack bond." My heart raced. "Like you had with Lydia?" "Different," Maxwell corrected gently. "What we had with Lydia was our first bond. What we're offering you is our second chance, and it's no less important, no less real. We'll never forget her." Tobias added, "She gave us Silas. She shaped who we are, but you gave us a future. You showed us how to be better fathers, better alphas, better people." "We want you as our omega," Roderick said. "Our mate, our partner, our family." I looked between them, these three incredible men who'd saved my life in every way that mattered. "Yes," I said. 1,000 times yes. The bonding ceremony was intimate. Just the four of us, and Silas, who insisted on being present even though he was too young to fully understand what was happening. The triplets marked me 3 bites on my scent glands, one from each of them. Left shoulder for Roderick, right shoulder for Maxwell. The junction of neck and shoulder for Tobias. When the bond snapped into place, I could feel them. Feel Roderick's steady strength. Feel Maxwell's gentle warmth. Feel Tobias's fierce protectiveness. And I could feel them feeling me, my love, my gratitude, my certainty that this was exactly where I belonged. Silas clapped his hands with joy, even though he couldn't see what was happening. Does this mean Asher is staying forever now? Forever, Roderick confirmed. And he's part of our family? Completely, Maxwell said. Good, Silas declared. Because I don't want anyone else. Just us. Just us. A year after the bonding, the triplets decided to hold a neighborhood meeting to address the rumors about Silas once and for all. They sent formal invitations to every family on their street. Most came out of curiosity, if nothing else. The meeting was held in the estate's main hall, elegant and imposing. Roderick stood at the front of the room, with Maxwell and Tobias flanking him. I stood slightly behind them with Silas beside me, holding my hand. We called you here, Roderick began, his voice carrying easily, to address something that should have been addressed years ago, the rumors about our son. The room went still. For those who don't know, Maxwell continued, there have been rumors circulating that our son's blindness is the result of some dark ritual or curse, that we sacrifice something unnatural to build our wealth. These rumors are false, Tobias said flatly. Completely, provably false. Roderick pulled out a folder and began passing copies of documents to the front row. Silas's blindness is genetic, inherited from his mother's side of the family. We have genetic testing results, medical records going back 5 years, and statements from multiple specialists. All of it proves his condition is natural and has nothing to do with anything supernatural. The documents circulated through the crowd. People read them with varying expressions: surprise, shame, stubborn disbelief. The rumors were started by a business competitor, Maxwell explained. Someone who wanted to damage our reputation and saw our family as an easy target. And you all believed it. You repeated it. You used it as an excuse to ostracize a 5-year-old child who never did anything to deserve your cruelty. A woman in the front row had the decency to look ashamed, but many others still looked defensive. Some of you, Tobias said, his gaze finding specific faces in the crowd, warned our mate that he might be our next sacrifice. You spread fear and hatred about an innocent child because it was easier than questioning whether the gossip was true. I stepped forward, Silas's hand still in mine. I met Silas at a charity gala. He was sitting alone while every other child played, because you'd all taught your children to avoid him. He asked me to describe the world to him because no one else ever had. And when I defended him, I lost my job, got hit by a car, and nearly died. All because I dared to suggest that maybe, just maybe, you were wrong about him. The room was silent now. We're not asking for your friendship, Roderick said. We're not even asking for your approval. We're demanding accountability. You owe our son an apology. You owe yourselves the truth. For a long moment, no one moved. Then an older man near the back stood up slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. I repeated things I had no business repeating. I taught my grandchildren to be afraid of a child who never hurt anyone. I'm ashamed of what I did. A few others followed. Awkward, halting apologies that sounded genuine enough. But many remained seated, silent, clinging to their suspicions and their pride. Roderick's expression hardened. For those of you who can't find it in yourselves to admit you were wrong, you're no longer welcome in our lives. Stay away from our family. Stay away from our property. Stay away from our son. He turned and walked out. Maxwell and Tobias followed. I scooped Silas up and carried him out with us, leaving the neighbors to their shame and their stubbornness. As we walked back through the estate, Silas said thoughtfully, some of them said sorry. Yes, they did, I agreed. Do you think they meant it? Some of them probably did. Silas was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't care if they're sorry or not. I have you and my dad's. That's all I need. Out of the mouths of babes. That evening, something small but miraculous happened. There was a knock on the door. Margaret answered it and came to find us looking pleasantly surprised. There's a child here to see Silas, a boy from down the street. He asked if Silas wants to play. Silas's face lit up like the sun. Really? Someone wants to play with me? Really, Margaret confirmed. We went to the door together. A boy about Silas's age stood there with his mother, both looking nervous but genuine. The mother cleared her throat. We attended the meeting today. My son has been asking about Silas for months, but I was wrong to keep them apart. If the offer still stands, he'd really like to play. Roderick studied them for a moment, then nodded. It stands. The boys disappeared into the garden, Silas navigating confidently now, explaining how he used sound and touch to explore the world. The other boy listened with obvious fascination, asking questions, treating Silas like any other kid. The triplets and I watched from the window as our son finally got to just be a child with a friend. This is what winning looks like, Maxwell said quietly. Not revenge, Tobias agreed. Just our son being happy. Everything we've fought for, Roderick finished. 2 years after I first met Silas, we were a real family. Silas was thriving. He attended a school for blind children where he excelled in every subject. He had friends. He had confidence. He had a future that looked bright and limitless. The triplets had learned to balance work and family, to be present for the moments that mattered. And I had learned to live with my grief instead of letting it consume me. I still thought about Ethan every day, still visited his grave on his birthday, still carried the scar of losing him. But I'd also learned that loving Silas wasn't replacing Ethan, that building a life with the triplets wasn't betraying my brother's memory, that I could hold both the grief and the joy, the past and the future, the loss and the love. On the anniversary of the night I first met Silas, I stood in the same hotel ballroom where it all began. The charity gala was being held again, and this time we were attending as a family. Silas wore a tiny suit and held my hand proudly. The triplets flanked us, protective but not smothering. When we entered the room, conversations stopped. People stared. But this time, the stares were different. Curious instead of hostile. Awed instead of disgusted. A little girl approached Silas, her face friendly. Hi, do you want to play? Silas's face broke into a huge smile. Yes, please. The girl took his hand and led him toward the children's area, chattering about the games they had set up. Other children joined them, treating Silas like any other kid. I watched with tears in my eyes as my son, because that's what Silas was to me now, my son played and laughed and belonged. You did this, Roderick said, his arm coming around my waist. You changed everything. We did this, I corrected. All of us together. Maxwell kissed my temple. Best decision we ever made, hiring you. Best decision I ever made was saying yes, I countered. Tobias pulled me close, and the four of us stood there watching Silas thrive, feeling the bond between us humming with love and contentment and certainty. I thought about that night 2 years ago, about the desperate Omega who grabbed a stranger and begged for help, about the broken man who chased ghosts into traffic, about the terrified fathers who didn't know how to save their son. And I thought about who we'd become, a family, imperfect and unconventional and stronger for having been broken. Silas ran back to us, breathless and grinning. Asher, Dad, Papa, there's a boy who knows Braille. Can he come over to play sometime? Of course he can, I said, kneeling down to his level. Silas hugged me tight. I love you. I love you too, buddy. He ran back to his friends. The triplets and I watched him go. No regrets? Roderick asked me quietly. I thought about everything we'd been through. The pain and the healing, the mistakes and the forgiveness, the grief and the joy. Not a single one, I said. And through the bond, I felt their agreement, their love, their certainty that all of this was exactly where we were meant to be. Thank you for joining Asher's journey from grief to healing, from isolation to family, from haunted to whole. Sometimes the people we've lost guide us toward the people we need to find. Sometimes loving again doesn't mean forgetting, it means honoring the past while building a future. Sometimes broken pieces, when fitted together just right, create something stronger than what came before. May you always find the courage to heal, the strength to love again, and the wisdom to know you're worth saving. Until next time.